The full depth of the Biden administration's betrayal of our citizens and our allies in Afghanistan is now just coming to light. I'll have the gory details. California's next governor, I hope, Larry Elder, joins me to talk about whether he is the black face of white supremacy and how Texas ingeniously figured out a way to overturn Roe versus Wade with a wink, wink from the Supreme Court. This is the Dinesh D'Souza podcast.
America needs this voice. The times are crazy. In a time of confusion, division, and lies, we need a brave voice of reason, understanding, and truth. This is the Dinesh D'Souza podcast.
The Biden administration's actions in Afghanistan are disastrous on so many different levels. Number one, the 13 U.S. servicemen killed unnecessarily in a suicide bomb blast that could have been prevented had the United States secured the airport and really secured the periphery around Kabul. And number two, the United States has essentially weaponized the Taliban and indirectly through the Taliban, all the other terrorist groups, not to mention other hostile countries. I was struck yesterday when Robert O'Neill, the man who got bin Laden, said the United States has become kind of a state sponsor of terror. Wow. We've been fighting terror supposedly since 9/11, and now we are the subsidizers. You and I are the subsidizers of it against our will, I should add. Now, I want to focus here on the betrayal of not just Americans, but also Afghan allies. Even though the Biden administration implies that they pretty much got everybody out, amazing airlift, the simple truth of it is we've left a whole bunch of Americans. No one knows quite how many. The Biden administration is very slippery in the way it does its count. They count Americans who supposedly want to leave as opposed to those that's, want to stay and be ruled by the Taliban? Really? Give us a list of those people. Let's hear from them that they're really happy. Oh, I think I'm just going to stay. It's really nice around here with the Taliban. Nonsense. Now here's a Sacramento school district saying that 24 of its students are still in Afghanistan. Amazing. We haven't heard much from Jen Psaki or Anthony Blinken about them. They haven't gotten them out. A Taliban folk singer was executed. Why? He was executed because music is evidently forbidden in Islam, at least according to the Taliban's reading of Islam. Here's a little look at what this guy's music. Take a listen. I mean, come on. I mean, think about this poor guy. His name is Fawad Andarabi. And the Taliban guys came to his house. They sat down and had tea with him. And then before they left, they shot him. This is who we're dealing with. This is a singer, by the way, who played on a bowed lute. It's called the gichak. And he sang traditional songs about his country. That's it. So this is what the United States has now not only left in Afghanistan, but you may say weaponized in Afghanistan. And then an Afghan interpreter. This is, by the way, a guy who saved Biden's life. Now, I'm not going to hold that against him, but evidently Biden was in Afghanistan. He was in Afghanistan with actually the current Secretary of State, Blinken. They were on with John Kerry, Chuck Hagel, Republican from Nebraska, and these guys got stranded in the mountains. And this was in the middle of heavy fighting between U.S. forces and Taliban forces. And this interpreter, a guy named Muhammad, they're not releasing his last name because he's in grave danger now. He's hiding in Afghanistan from the Taliban, which is trying to find him to kill him. And this is a guy who basically contacted someone from the Wall Street Journal and said, please get me out. And then here, by the way, is Jen Psaki, right? And listen to the condescension and just sheer ignorance of her statement. She goes, our message to him is to thank him for fighting by our side. Really? Thank you for the role you helped in helping a number of my favorite people out of a snowstorm. Wait, this wasn't a matter of just rescuing them from a snowstorm, as though this guy kind of, basically trekked out the snow's kind of heavy. No, this was in the middle of crossfire. This is a guy who risked his life. This is the kind of guy we want out. We want to bring to America. This is probably a guy who will contribute to America. Here's the Wall Street Journal, by the way. Quote, this is their headline. Majority of interpreters, other U.S. visa applicants were left behind in Afghanistan. So the significance of this is that although the U.S. has evacuated 123,000 people, by the way, only 6,000 of them U.S. citizens, the U.S. implies, these are the people really helping us. These are the translators without which we couldn't function. No, the majority of translators are still in Kabul. They're still in Afghanistan. They're probably being hunted down as we speak as the Taliban goes door to door. The State Department has admitted, quote, that they don't have data on who they have. They don't know who these people are that they're bringing to America. In fact, they go, I'm now quoting the State Department. This is State Department spokesman Ned Price. He was asked, who are these people? What do you know about them? Here's what he says. Much of that information is going to be forthcoming, meaning we're going to get it once these individuals have cycled through transit points in the Middle East, in Europe, and for those being relocated to the United States, relocated here. So simple truth of it is they're bringing a whole bunch of people, Taliban, Al-Qaeda, ISIS. They don't even know. They're going to have a talk with them once they get to Dubai or once they get to Copenhagen or to Paris. Sit down. What's your full name? Who are you really? This is the way our government operates. It's absolute and utter chaos. And then finally, the U.S. State Department is boasting about the fact that they've got a signed agreement, a quote, joint statement. I think this is really what Anthony Blinken means when he says we're leading with diplomacy. A joint statement from 100 countries calling for Afghans who want to leave to be able to leave. Now just think of the sheer vacuousness of doing this. 100 countries are calling for it. What does calling for it mean? What are you going to actually do to make this happen? Nothing. We're going to issue a statement. What is this, moral exhortation on the global stage? This is what I think the Biden administration means by, quote, holding the Taliban accountable. So they use these phrases which mean one thing to us in one context. We think, oh yeah, this guy's going to be held accountable. There's going to be consequences. But what are the consequences? There are no consequences. Perhaps the only consequences that the United States are going to go, well, listen, we're not going to give you quite as much money as you're asking for because you're misbehaving. You're not letting our people leave. We're actually getting ready to give money to pay ransoms, in my opinion. They won't be called that, but that's what they are, to what now has become the most dangerous terrorist regime in the world. I've talked before about Mike Lindell's pillows and his sheets and his robes. Now I want to talk about the new My Slippers. Mike has really done it again. He's taken over 2 years to develop these My Pillow My Slippers. They're designed to wear indoor or outdoor all day long. They're made with My Pillow foam and impact gel to help prevent fatigue. They're made with quality leather suede, and for a limited time, Mike is offering 50% off his new My Slippers. The My Slippers, by the way, are so comfortable, you're going to want to get some for the whole family. We actually did. Here's Danielle, by the way, with her moccasins, and of course, Debbie and I just love ours. I got the moccasins. Debbie got the slip-ons. Go to mypillow.com and use promo code Dinesh. By the way, you'll get deep discounts on all the MyPillow products, the Giza Dream bed sheets, the MyPillow mattress topper, the MyPillow towel sets. Call 800-876-0227 or go to mypillow.com. Make sure to use promo code DINESH, Dinesh. The indispensable Sohrab Ahmari. Do you remember him? I had him on the podcast, now a few weeks, maybe a couple of weeks ago. He's the op-ed editor of the New York Post. And very smart guy. We talked when he was on about his book. He has an article in the American Conservative, and it's called Woke Bachabazi. Kind of an interesting title. Now, Bachabazi is an Afghan term. And what does it refer to? Well, kind of refers to the exploitation of young boys in Afghanistan, these so-called dancing boys who are recruited to go from town to town, supposedly to dance and sing, but these older men take advantage of them. And this practice, I have to say, was approved or at least condoned by the U.S. military. In fact, it was allowed to go on, I'm sorry to say, on U.S. military bases. And the argument at the time was, well, this is part of Afghan culture. We may not like it, but let's remember we're in a war here. We've got to sort of look the other way if our allies are doing things that we don't approve of, particularly if these are things that are sort of ingrained in the Afghan tradition. This was sort of the realpolitik argument for allowing this bacha-bazi nonsense to continue in Afghanistan. But here's the point that Sohrab Ahmari is getting at. If bacha-bazi is allowed in Afghanistan, and by the way, it was outlawed by the Taliban. The Taliban are going to stop this practice in Afghanistan now. That's probably the only good thing the Taliban are going to do in Afghanistan. But nevertheless, Sohrab Ahmari's point is, we're bringing all these Afghan males to America. They like bacha-bazi. And so they're going to be looking in America to do kind of the same thing. And then, says Sohrab Ahmari, we have our own version of bacha-bazi in America. It's called the sexually perverted left. In other words, we have, and here Ahmari mentioned something I didn't know about. It's called the Prostasia Foundation. This is a crazy group. And what do? They promote, you may say, pedophilia. They promote adults taking advantage of young boys, what they call a minor attracted person. So they don't want you to call you a pedophile. You're not a pedophile. You're a MAP. A minor attracted person. And according to their website, I'm now quoting a woman named Sheila Vanden Heuvel Collins, who apparently writes a blog. She goes, nepiophiles, pedophiles, hebophiles, and ebipophiles. Now, by the way, nepiophiles is people who are attracted to infants. I kid you not. So she's talking about these groups, and what does she say about them? She goes, they have, quote, put up with stigma every single day of the year. In other words, they are facing a wall of intolerance in American society. And this group is trying to legitimize this practice, and its communications director is a guy named Noah Berlatsky, who, by the way, is a respectable leftist. I mean, he writes for the Atlantic Monthly. He's written for the Washington Post, Foreign Policy, NBC Think, Reason Magazine. So Sohrab Ahmari's point is that basically their pedophiles are now kind of joining our pedophiles in American society. The sick trend that it was at one time defended as, oh, we find this really disgusting, we don't like it, but we're going to tolerate it, is now combined with the fact that not only are there people in America, this is not us, not you and me, but this is the left, that not only tolerates, but is willing to normalize. I mean, think of the sick scenes of all these progressive parents who are watching these kind of adult men in latex boots twerking before their kids, and they go, it's so cool. This is basically the degeneracy of an 11th century tribal culture meeting the degeneracy of a 21st century American left. And Sohrab Ahmari's point is, what a toxic combination when you put the two together. In their recent budget proposal, the White House Budget Office forecast inflation for 2021 at 2.1%. Now, in June, the actual inflation rate, 5.4%. So the point is, inflation is here. It's coming faster than our government is ready for. And their solution is to stick their heads in the sand. So don't stick your head in the sand. Hedge your savings against inflation by diversifying into gold and silver with Birch Gold Group. If you haven't reached out to Birch Gold to diversify part of your IRA or 401k into a precious metals IRA, do it today. I buy my gold from Birch Gold. They have an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau, countless 5-star reviews, and thousands of happy customers. Talk to them, have them help you safeguard your investments. Text Dinesh to 484848 to claim your free information kit and to speak with a precious metals expert on holding gold and silver in a tax-sheltered account. Again, text Dinesh to 484848 and protect your savings today. I'm really thrilled to welcome my old friend Larry Elder, whom I've known, I think at least a decade, if not longer, syndicated radio host extraordinaire. In fact, on the Salem Network, the same network that sponsors this podcast, author of a number of important books, and now a very serious gubernatorial candidate for California, giving Gavin Newsom a run for his money and a big scare. Larry, welcome to the podcast. I got to say, when you first declared, I thought you were doing this to kind of basically get the message out. I didn't think that you would pose a lethal danger to Gavin Newsom, but it seems like you do. What did you see about the race at the beginning that evidently I didn't?
Well, Dinesh, thank you for that. A lot of people felt the same way as you did. In fact, one of my opponents referred to my candidacy as a vanity campaign, and it kind of ticked me off. And I've been talking about these issues of crime and the rise of homelessness and the outrageous way this guy shut down this state while ignoring science, having his own kids enjoy in-person private education, the decline in the quality of public education in California, the ridiculous rolling brownouts we're having, the failure to adequately equip our water supply. We're running out of water here in California. I've been talking about these issues for 27 years. I'm on in every major market in California and radio, from Sacramento down to San Diego. I've had a syndicated column since April of 1998, where I've written a column every single week, over almost 1,200 columns. So I knew the issues. I have high name recognition. The only person I was worried about in terms of name recognition was Caitlyn Jenner. And with all due respect, I felt that I knew more about the issues than she did. So I was deadly serious. I knew I would pose a real threat, and it's worked out pretty much as I thought it would.
Well, Larry, I think what's striking about this is it's conventional wisdom that occasionally a Republican can sneak in and win a state like New York or California. But to do this, they have to be a major rhino. They have to be a very moderate Republican that's palatable to the Democrats in the state. I think what's striking about you're running a conservative campaign. You're hitting hard across the board, and yet you're striking a chord, not just with Republicans and conservatives, but with moderates, and you're making inroads into Democrats. Talk about, why is California receptive now to a full-throated conservative message?
Dinesh, because Californians are angry. About 1.7 million people signed that petition to recall him. A good third of them were people that voted for him just 2 years earlier, independents and Democrats. And among the Hispanics, which are the largest racial group, whether white, black, Asian American, in California, about 65% of them voted for him 2 years earlier. Now, the majority of Hispanics want him out. And the primary reason, in my opinion, is because of school choice. They know they're getting the worst education. Before the pandemic, nearly half of all third graders in California could not read at state levels of proficiency. 80% of the students in our government schools are Black and brown. And nearly 75% of Black boys cannot read at state levels of proficiency. So urban parents are beginning to realize they're getting ripped off, and it doesn't make any sense for them to routinely pull that lever for the Democratic Party. Then you have rising crime. Crime doesn't have a party, doesn't have a color. Homelessness doesn't have a party, doesn't have a color. The outrageous cost of living. For the first time, Dinesh, the average price of a home in California just hit $800,000. That's 150% above the national average. You add all these things up, the density of our fires, the severity of our fires because of poor forest management, rolling brownouts because of the failure to invest properly in our energy grid, and people have had it across the board.
Now, for the Hispanics, who are obviously a critical voting bloc in California, the left has always assumed that if they beat the drums of identity politics, and of course that was the basis of these attacks on you, Larry Elder's the blackface of white supremacy, and when you look, they just go down the litmus test. He's not for defunding the police. He's against sanctuary for illegals, as if these are signs of racism. Could it be that Hispanics in California are beginning to value upward mobility, lower taxation, safe streets more than they are the kind of traditional appeal to their racial identity?
Absolutely, and they're tired of being used. They're tired of being told that they're victims, and they're tired of the poor quality of schools and the crime that has gone up. We're talking about violent crime. Shootings have gone up, homicides have gone up, and the disproportionately affected by that are Black and brown people, the very people that the left claims that they care about. Just in Oakland the other day, Barbara Boxer got mugged, her cell phone was taken. And a few months before that, a mentally ill homeless guy attacked Gavin Newsom. Had Gavin Newsom not had his security detail, he probably would have been injured. How many Black and brown people living in the inner city have a security detail around them? They are disproportionately the victims of the very crime that this man has allowed. Under his supervision, 20,000 convicted felons have been released early Many of them are violent offenders, and based upon historical statistics, they're more likely to reoffend. Again, the people hurt by that are Black and brown people living in the inner city, and they've had it. They're fed up, Dinesh. They've absolutely had it.
Larry, do you think at one time, as you know, California used to be Nixon country, used to be Reagan country? There was an important essay that the political scientist James Q. Wilson wrote years ago about how California represents the American dream. Do you think that California can pivot back more toward the political center? And second, can it become, as it once was, the embodiment of the American dream itself?
I think so. I think I'm going to be the new face of the Republican Party. I'm common sense. I'm from the inner city. I'm a product of public schools. I can talk to people in ways that a lot of Republicans haven't or have refused to. And if I can make a tangible improvement in the lives of people, if they see some of the people disappearing from the streets and being treated and being removed elsewhere, if they see an improvement in the quality of education, if they can remove their kids out of an underperforming government school and put them in a private school, religious school, or even homeschooling or a charter school, if they can see a decline in crime and they can see that my ideas, which are quite common sense, work, I think they're going to have to rethink their hostility toward the Republican Party. And that's one of the reasons I believe that Gavin Newsom is so afraid of me and has resorted to things like referring to this as a Republican takeover, a Trump takeover. But once I got into the race, Dinesh, they stopped saying that it's a takeover of white supremacists. For some reason, they dropped that talking point. But that didn't stop the LA Times. The LA Times referred to me as, quote, the black face of white supremacy, end of quote.
It just shows you how scared they are. Larry, let's close out by simply asking if someone wants to support your campaign, what's your website? Where do they go to be able to help you get across the finish line in this critical race at this critical time?
Well, thank you for that. You can go to electelder.com, because my opponent, Gavin Newsom, can raise and spend an unlimited amount of money. I have expenditure limitations, and already he's raised about $50 million from the usual suspects, the teachers union, the public sector unions, Hollywood, and big tech to defeat me. I'm probably going to be outspent by a factor of 10 to 1, but it doesn't matter. So many people are angry, as I pointed out. I don't care how much money they spend. People want to change. They want common sense, and they want to make sure that the streets are safe, that the schools work, and they have jobs.
Really appreciate it, Larry. Thank you for your time. It's a pleasure as always.
See you in Sacramento, Dinesh.
For sure. If you're thinking of replacing your carpets due to pet stains and odors, you must try Genesis 950. The reviews are amazing. This is one product that actually works. Now, with water, it breaks down the bonds of stains and odors so they are gone for good. Its antibacterial component removes pet odors from carpet and padding. It can be used in a carpet cleaning machine, and it's green, so it's safe for your family and pets. Genesis 950 is made in America. 1 gallon of industrial strength Genesis 950 makes up to 7 gallons of cleaner. But Genesis 950 is also great for bathrooms, floors, upholstery, and grease stains. Debbie used it to clean the entire kitchen. When I got chocolate all over my pants and on the couch, Debbie says, not for the first time. Genesis 950 took it right off. Genesis 950 has great customer service. Order 1 gallon direct at genesis950.com. You'll get a free spray bottle, free shipping, and a $10 coupon using the code Dinesh. That's genesis950.com. Coupon only available for 1 gallon purchase. Genesis 950. It's much cheaper than replacing your carpets or your pants or your couch. Who really is Antifa? Now, Biden, of course, somewhat comically said during the debate with Trump, Antifa doesn't really exist. Yes, it does exist. It's a loose-knit, but nevertheless a nationwide organization. It's got chapters. It's got what they call affinity groups. But who's the kind of person that joins Antifa? I mean, honestly, this is something that I am curious about. And as it turns out, Reuters has done a profile of a woman. Her name is Nicole Ambruster. She's 37 years old, and the article is called American Antifa. And what I find fascinating about this article is that this is a woman who was actually raised in an upper middle class family. She, a well-off family in suburban New York. She went to an expensive liberal arts institution called St. Lawrence University, which is in New York State, up near the Canadian border, very left-wing. That's where she was radicalized. In fact, right when she was in college, she began to organize these kind of confrontational protests. And according to Nicole Ambruster, she was in college when she studied Nazi Germany. And she says, I developed a revulsion for fascists. This woman is a kook. She goes, my family's from Germany, and you learn all the horrible things. So evidently she didn't know about Nazism till she got to college. And then she was like, oh, wow, this is scary stuff. But of course, the question is not whether the Nazis are scary. Of course they are. But what makes American Christians and patriots and Republicans into Nazis? What makes Trump a Nazi? Nazism was all about state control. Nazism was politically on the left. The Nazis knew that. Their opponents knew that. How come suddenly Nazism has been sort of transformed, at least in the progressive mind? None of these questions really addressed in the article. But what we do realize is that you've got these people, and they develop this kind of fanatical mind. Quote, we are prepared to put our bodies on the line in the event of police or fascist or racist violence. Now, they don't encounter this fascist or racist violence. It's all in their imagination. But nevertheless, this is what motivates them to believe. They're true believers in the sense that the philosopher Eric Hoffer used the term. They believe that they are somehow crusaders fighting on the side of justice. And this woman, she basically lives now in a kind of SUV. She has a nomadic lifestyle. She's kind of hooked up. I don't mean romantically with the reason I say I don't mean romantically is the guy she's hooked up with is with this guy. This guy is, his name is Schultz. He's 70 years old. He's apparently a guy who's decided that his retirement is going to be spent with Antifa. And these two characters, they go around, their language is all kind of, they call each other comrade, the police are pigs. The fascists are apparently nicknamed the Fash. We're going to go get the Fash. And so what these guys do basically, and this Nicole Armbruster has really been everywhere. So Charlottesville in 2017, she was there. The Trump inauguration riots, she was there. And so what happens is she keeps getting arrested and she keeps getting released. So again, contrast her fate. This is somebody who's like a professional terrorist, a professional thug, and yet no accountability. Minor charges, misdemeanor here, a misdemeanor. Just contrast her with the January 6th protester. She's never been in solitary confinement. And basically, these are people who not only flout the law, they don't believe in the law. Here's a quote. We disrupt fascist and far-right organizing. We don't rely on the cops or the courts to do our work for us. So they're a direct action group. They're essentially an organization set up to do violence, and violence is in fact what they do. Now, as I say, there's no attempt here to give an explanation for what real kinship there is, what ideological similarity or identity there is between, let's say, Mussolini's fascists or Hitler's National Socialists. And again, these people are socialists. These are left-wing socialists. They are pursuing fascist tactics. But somehow in their own deluded minds, they're fighting fascism. Right now, you are fortunate to have more time to lock into a low mortgage rate. It's true, there are still some options in the twos, but interest rates are forecast to rise in the coming weeks and months, meaning the days of super cheap refinance rates are numbered. So please make today the day you call American Financing. Get that free mortgage review I've been telling you about. It's a 10-minute call with a salary-based mortgage consultant. No pressure, no obligation, no upfront or hidden fees. Just a simple conversation around custom loans that can save you up to $1,000 a month. So don't put off a refinance any longer. Pre-qualify for free by calling 888-528-1219. That number again, 888-528-1219, or visit AmericanFinancing.net. American Financing, NMLS 182334, NMLSConsumerAccess.org. I'm here with Debbie. We want to discuss some huge developments. The Supreme Court decision just out, 5-4, with Justice Roberts joining the three liberals. But essentially, the Supreme Court leaves intact, leaves in place this incredible Texas law. The law, I believe, is called SB 8. And what does it do? It essentially outlaws abortion beyond 6 weeks. And it allows citizens of Texas to file lawsuits against people who help procure an abortion. So the doctor who performs it, the nurse who assists, the clinic that facilitates it, even someone who drives you to the abortion. It essentially makes abortion impossible, with very rare exceptions, beyond 6 weeks. And so Texas has found a way to, you may almost say, strike down Roe versus Wade before the Supreme Court does anything. And the Supreme Court has said, for now, okay. Debbie, what do you think about this? I mean, this is huge. I mean, think about it. Since 1973, in no state in the Union have you been able to, in any meaningful way, restrict abortion until now. And as of today, I mean, clinics have basically shut down. There were long lines a couple of days ago because they knew that the law was going into effect. This is an issue on which, well, number one, you've kind of shifted position over the years. Talk about that.
Yeah, so when I was in college, I guess I've always been a Republican, but I considered myself more of a pro-choicer, and not in the way that you might think of a pro-choice person, like advocating abortion. I certainly did not advocate abortion. I knew it was murder, so I did not advocate for it. However, I also did not want to do anything to stir the pot. In other words, if a woman wanted to have an abortion, I felt like it was her business to have one. I was not going to,
What changed your mind?
What changed my mind? So when I was 28 years old, with my first husband, got pregnant and had a miscarriage at about, I would say, 7-8 weeks. But before I had that miscarriage, I was having a lot of issues. And before I had that miscarriage, I saw the baby's heartbeat. So I immediately knew that there was a beating heart inside of me.
I mean, pause, because the reason
yes.
this is significant, I think, is because 6 weeks is in fact the boundary set by the Texas law.
Right, but it's called the heartbeat bill because it means that at a heartbeat, and I want to tell you that even before 6 weeks. So anyway, so I saw the baby's heartbeat before the 7 weeks, right? So unfortunately, I did lose that pregnancy, and I felt the loss like I would have felt for any child that I would have had. Then fast forward a little bit later, I got pregnant again, and I was having issues again. I thought I was having a miscarriage, and this was between 5 and 6 weeks of pregnancy, which is really about the time when you miss a period, right? But I knew I was pregnant immediately, and so I was having a lot of problems. I went to the emergency room, and my then doctor, who's a friend of mine actually, performed a ultrasound, and I saw Justin's heartbeat between 5 and 6 weeks gestation. And so, she said, look at your baby. And you could see, like, it looked like a little butterfly just going, tick,
a little flutter.
tick, tick. A little flutter is what she called it. She said, no, the baby's okay. The baby's alive. So I immediately just, this whole pro-choice thing was out the window immediately because I knew that there was a life growing inside of me. And for me to think that it's okay for a human being to end the life of another human being because of inconvenience was
think of
horrific.
the dishonesty of the phrase, reproductive rights, because the truth of it is you've already reproduced. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
The reproduced
Exactly.
being exists and is in fact genetically distinct. It's inside of you, but it's not the same as you.
Exactly. So I think that is the reason why I became so impassionate with the pro-life movement. And I got back into politics. I was a political science major, and I kind of lost my way a few years there having children. But then in about 2008, I got involved with the Republican Party again. And in 2013, Texas, leave it to Texas, the trailblazers here in this had what was the first restrictive anti-abortion law in the country. And that was that you could not have an abortion after 20 weeks. So this was met with a lot of resistance. And it reminds me really of the people that are right now at the Capitol.
We have a short clip. We're going to take a moment and watch it. This is a clip of a group of people demonstrating outside the Texas State House. Listen.
Hands up, everybody! My body is my own! Hands up, everybody! My body is my own!
My My body is my own. Well, keep your body.
Your
really.
body is your own. That's true.
You can keep your body. But, and another thing really that just appalled me is the fact that they say that we're the hateful people, that we're the racists, when in fact, we want their unborn babies to live. If we were racist and we were hateful, don't you think we would kind of look the other way and let them do what they do? But
and there are some
right?
people who have a kind of a eugenic justification for abortion, which is we
Right.
don't want to support anybody. Let them take care of the
Right.
problem this way.
Right. So why do we care so much about these bohemians having children? You would think if we were that hateful that we wouldn't want more bohemians in this world, right? But that is not the case.
One of the hashtags that I'm
So-
seeing on social media, which I think is really interesting, they're trying to demonize the right, and their hashtag is American Taliban. Now, there is one point I want to make about this because we think, the Taliban's against abortion, we're against abortion. Wait a minute. First of all, the Taliban is not against abortion. You know what the Taliban wants? They're against abortion for Muslim women. Why? Because they want more Muslim babies born into the world. The Taliban is delighted to see Western women abort their offspring. So if you want to know if the Taliban supports your right to abort, they actually do.
They encourage it.
I mean, it's a little bit like the Nazis.
Yes.
Hitler was not pro-life. Hitler was pro-life for Nordic German women.
Right,
Hitler
right.
wanted everybody else to abort their kids.
Yeah, they don't want children. They don't want Christian children or secular children.
They're not in principle for life.
No. They want more Muslims in this world. For
And then
sure.
here's Jeffrey Toobin, by the way. He's been CNN's point man on this issue. And he says that doom is coming for Roe v. Wade. I think the genius of the Texas law, I have to say, is it's an end run around Roe v. Wade because it's not state action.
Yes, and can we give kudos to Senator Brian Hughes from Texas State Senator Brian Hughes and Texas Representative Shelby Slauson for that brilliant heartbeat bill.
I'm going to talk probably
amazing.
tomorrow and then maybe the day after or Monday about the genius of the law and how it's set up in a way that the Supreme Court could, whatever it decides in the Mississippi case this fall, the Texas law, I think, will still stand. And it could be that other Republican legislatures, and they should be taking a hard look because they should be passing these kinds of laws right now, right away. And this could well be a second way, quite apart from the Supreme Court, to kind of, you may say, put a nail in the coffin of Roe v. Wade.
Amen to that.
In May 2011, the White House leaked that SEAL Team 6 had killed bin Laden, and immediately al-Qaeda placed bounties on the heads of all Navy SEALs. Just 3 months later, on August 6, 2011, a helicopter carrying many SEALs from that same elite unit was shot down in Tangi Valley, Afghanistan, with no survivors. 30 Americans died that day in the greatest single incident loss of life in the history of the Navy SEALs, U.S. Special Operations. But huge questions remain. Where was the black box and why was it missing? Did our restrictive rules of engagement contribute to this tragic outcome? What really happened to SEAL Team 6? Learn what we now know about the tragic mission. Watch the provocative new film, Fallen Angel. The full title is Fallen Angel, !Extortion 17. It's showing only on salemnow.com. The film again, Fallen Angel, !Extortion 17. To see it, go to salemnow.com. You have a continued proliferation of bogus, which is to say hoax, fake racial incidents on the American campus. It's like Jussie Smollett has now become a nationwide phenomenon. The latest hoax is at Emory University. And the hoax is given away in the title itself. Here's an article, and it's from the Post-Millennial. I'm going to quote the article. Emory University won't share suspect's race after Autism Center was vandalized with swastikas and racial slurs. What does this mean? Well, here's what it means. Emory University apparently discovered this racial incident, actually several racial incidents. The Autism Center was defaced with anti-Semitic graffiti. And then down the hallway, there were also apparently racist epithets. And so a very familiar pattern here. Emory University, almost as if an Pavlovian cue, goes into major feigned hysteria. I say feigned hysteria because they act as if, oh, the hidden racism of the Emory community has come out. Is this a professor? Is this a dean? Are these a group of fraternity students? We vow to crack down. And so the rhetoric matches all this. Emory University is committed to fostering a safe and inclusive campus, blah, blah, blah. As we heal in the days and weeks ahead, it's important we continue to provide strength to one another. We'll provide an environment and learning community focused on each other, maintaining an inclusive society, blah, 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 blah. These are recycled press releases. You can almost pass them along from one racial incident to another. Save time and money by doing this. Anyway, sure enough, they arrest the suspect. And the suspect, it turns out, is a guy named Roy Lee Gordon, a part-time staff member with Emory. Now, here's the interesting question. They release his name, but they say nothing more about him. And so a couple of magazines that cover all this are like, let's try to go to the Public Information Office. Let's try to get a copy of the police report. Let's try to get a copy of the arrest warrant, photos of the vandalism, photos of the suspect, mugshot. Turns out, they're unavailable. Emory won't provide them. And I think we know what that means. In other words, in concealing the identity and race of the suspect, not the identity, but the race of the suspect, they're also revealing it. Obviously, the guy is a, quote, person of color. It's somebody who's perpetrated the scam to, quote, draw attention to the serious problem of anti-Semitism and racism, which is obviously being caused by me. I mean, really? So this is what these people are up to. And again, I've talked before about what makes them do it. I mean, why would somebody be so demented as to fictionalize a racist incident? First of all, if there was a lot of racism, you wouldn't need to fictionalize it. But here's the point. There isn't. You can go far and wide on the campus and you see students are bending over backwards. They're literally treating minorities and people of color with kid gloves. So you can't find it. And so what happens is all these people on campus get indoctrinated into the narrative of racism. Racism is everywhere. And they're like, where? I don't see it. There's a mismatch between the narrative that you are told and the racism that you don't in fact experience. And so it creates a kind of a cognitive dissonance. It's kind of like someone's telling you, it's really hot outside. You go outside. It's kind of cool. It's not hot at all. You're like, where's the heat? Well, no, it's really hot, Dinesh. It's really hot. I don't really feel it. I don't really see it. So you begin to feel, am I nuts? So what happens is it's almost as if your mind, because you can't make the narrative fit the facts, you go, well, maybe I can make the facts fit the narrative. I don't see racism, so let me sort of fake it. In faking it, I don't think that I'm just faking it. I think I'm actually making explicit what's already there. So what you have, and colleges are now so used to this because it's kind of like, another fake racial incident. Okay, well, let's do what we always do. Let's cover up the incident. Let's pretend like it never happened. We're not going to take back anything we said. We're going to still pretend like we need to be on heightened alert for racism. So this is the sort of twisted situation in which our society to some degree, but certainly our campuses have put themselves in. And the primary blame here lies with the feckless, almost effeminate, utterly hollow leadership of these campuses. The deans, the professors, the president of the college, all these people have no backbone. They're unable to deal with these things in an intelligent way, in a rational way. And so as a result, I think, in many ways, they're going to make the problem even worse. One of the most radical plans to reshape the future of America is happening right now, and we need to stop it. President Biden's plan to pack the U.S. Supreme Court. Now, back in April, the president launched this special judicial commission to what he calls reform the court, but the real plan is to install 4 more liberal justices to gain an automatic majority and ensure favorable rulings for his radical policies. And once the court is packed, it will end the rule of law as we know it, which is exactly what happened in Venezuela, in Argentina. So let's be clear, America is not a banana republic. Now, thankfully, First Liberty Institute is taking a stand. They've issued a letter to the commission asking them to reject this radical court-packing scheme, and they're not alone. Franklin Graham, Ed Meese, James Dobson, Tony Perkins, Americans for Prosperity, American Family Association. Plus 60,000 others have joined this coalition, but we need 1 million. Debbie and I signed, so add your name now. Go to supremecoup.com. I'll spell that out for you. It's Supreme, SUPREMECOUP.com to sign First Liberty's letter. That's supremecoup.com, and may God bless America. I want to complete my discussion of Aquinas and his proofs of God by looking at an objection to Aquinas' sort of mode of reasoning that doesn't come from his own time, but comes from now, from our time. In fact, it comes from many of the people who call themselves the so-called new atheists. So, to recapitulate for a moment on Aquinas, Aquinas basically argues to God from causation. He has 5 proofs, but I'm going to focus here on his proof from causation, that things are caused by other things. A causes B, and B causes C, and C causes D, and so on. And Aquinas sort of reasons back and says there sort of has to be a first cause. There has to be an original cause that is not itself caused. And Aquinas says that cause we call God. Now, the atheists think, ha ha ha, we've got a really clever comeback. Take that, Aquinas. And so now I'm quoting Sam Harris, the author of one of the New Atheist books, and he goes, who created God? So in other words, he's applying Aquinas' own reasoning to Aquinas. If Aquinas says that everything has a cause and the universe must have a cause and that cause is God, Harris's point is to push the reasoning one step further and ask essentially what caused God. And the same line of rebuttal we see in Richard Dawkins, Christopher Hitchens, Carl Sagan, the physicist Steven Weinberg. And Dawkins concludes that if you can't answer this question of what caused, who or what caused God, then, quote, the theist answer has utterly failed. Utterly failed. Now, I want to address this head on. And I want to address this by backing up for a moment and examining the issue of causation itself. Now, Aquinas believed, along with Aristotle, and I believe also, that our knowledge comes to us through our senses, right? We have 5 senses, and if you think about it, that's how knowledge from the outside world comes to us. Now, our interior minds and our faculties can then process that information, try to make sense of it, but knowledge comes through the window, you may say, of the senses. So our knowledge is based on experience. And experience, says Aquinas, sets the outer bounds of what reason can know. Experience sets the outer parameters of human knowledge. You can't really go beyond experience because there's nothing to go beyond. Experience is sort of all we have to gain external knowledge. So Aquinas believes, and I think this is irrefutable, that using our reason, we can see that reason has certain limits. And what are those limits? They're the limits that are set by experience itself. Now, here's the point. Since our human experience is limited, we can only apply it to concepts like causation when human experience is involved. I gave the example yesterday, I believe, of walking past an alley and looking down the alley and seeing a human head rolling around. Now, if I'm a detective, I can go up to that head, I can look carefully and say, well, based upon what I can see here, based on my experience of what's here in front of me, I can see that this was not an accident. I can also see that this was not a self-inflicted wound. I can see very clearly, based on the evidence in front of me, that this was murder. Somebody did this. There's some perpetrator who caused it. I may not know who caused it. I got to investigate further. But I know based on experience. Why? Because I know about human beings. I know about heads. I know about what happens when they get cut off and how and what's likely to have done that. But now here's a second example. Let's just say that I'm walking past that same alley and I see halfway down the alley an extraterrestrial object. In other words, I see, let's just say, glowing lights. I see a certain kind of substance, but I've never encountered it before. There's nothing in my experience that tells me who or what it is. I cannot tell if this object is a thing or is it some kind of an alien? Is it alive? Is it dead? I know nothing about it. It is outside my experience completely. And here's my question. all the normal questions I can ask about the human head are inapplicable to this object because I have no experience of it. I can't say things like, was this object put here deliberately? Did it come from outer space? Does this object have a lifespan? I cannot ask those questions. They're meaningless in this context. Why? Because they are outside the bounds of all human experience. And that's the key point. The key point is this. When we talk about causation, causation is a concept that we apply in the world. Think of it sort of this way. When you read a novel, let's say Crime and Punishment, there is causation in the novel, right? And so you can ask a question like, why did Raskolnikov kill the old woman? What is the cause of that murder? And that makes sense. Why do all the characters act as they do? That makes, you can investigate at a human level using, if you will, the lens of human experience to identify all the multifarious causes that occur in the novel. But I want to suggest there is a cause, not in the novel, but of the novel itself. And that cause is Dostoevsky. But that's a different type of cause. Dostoevsky is outside the novel. He's the creator of the novel. And so you can't apply the same kind of questions that you apply inside the novel. Things like, why did Raskolnikov do that? How's the detective going to figure this one out? You can't say, well, what about this Dostoevsky fellow? Where does he fit into the story? Where does he come from? He is the cause of the story at a sort of different level than the events in the story. And this is kind of what Aquinas is getting at. When he says that God is the cause of the universe, the simple truth of it is we don't know about the nature of God in the same way that we know the nature of, let's say, a stick or a rolling head. So we can ask about causation in those cases. But to ask a question like, who caused God, is a stupid and meaningless question, I think Aquinas would say, and I agree. Why? Because it is outside the bounds of human experience. God is not subject to causation in the same way that Dostoevsky is not subject to causation in the same way as the events inside his novel. So Aquinas' proof works. And the rebuttal, who caused God, is kind of an out-of-bounds question. Why? Because it's a question ultimately not derived from anything whatsoever in human experience. Time for our mailbox, and let's go to today's question. Listen.
Hi, Dinesh. I have a question for you and Debbie concerning countries and cultures like Venezuela and Cuba and even Afghanistan as to what they would have to do to be able to sustain constitutional democracies. This is especially concerning to me now that I even have doubts that our own country is able to sustain the democracy and freedom that we have enjoyed. Thank you.
Very good question. And for a long time, there were people who wondered if there were cultures that were somehow inherently incapable of importing democracy. I think one of the optimistic stories of the last 50 years or 70 years has been that democracy actually is a plant that can spread. Much of South America, for example, was at one time run by these caudillo dictatorships. But most of South America today is democratic. Cuba did have a dictatorship, Batista. Unfortunately, they went from one dictatorship to another and worse form of dictatorship, namely Castro. So they have not enjoyed, you may say, the blessings of liberty. Now, Venezuela has. You don't have to worry about how the democratic plant can be planted. Venezuela had a two-party system. They had COPE, they had Acción Democrática. I've learned all this from Debbie, of course. And they had a functioning, flawed, but nevertheless, a democracy. India, the same thing. After British rule, India was able to successfully implement a democracy. Now, Afghanistan is a little different, and I'll talk more in depth about it in a later segment, but Afghanistan is a deeply tribal society where it's not even clear to me that nationalism, which is to say the idea that we're all Afghans, has even taken root over there. I think we went to, quote, transform Afghanistan. We didn't realize that there is no Afghanistan. I mean, there are Tajiks, there are Hazaras, there are Pashtuns, and this is the way it's been for centuries. This is kind of why I like the Man Who Would Be King. It kind of shows that this is a society plucked away from the world, existing, you may almost say, outside of time. And at the end of the story, it goes back to the way it was. It returns to that kind of society. And the two Westerners who kind of show up, Sean Connery, are expelled from the story. And they return, one of them dies and the other returns in bad shape. But you may say the society goes on. So I'm really not sure. I don't think Afghanistan is, quote, ready for democracy. It's partly because its tribal affinities and in some cases now it's Islamic fanaticism too deeply ingrained to allow the democratic plant any room to grow.
Subscribe to the Dinesh D'Souza podcast on Apple, Google, and Spotify, or watch on Rumble, YouTube, and SalemNow.com.